Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbly Nines breakdown video with myself and Sloth today. Jake O'Brien, this is a rumor that kind of came out of the blue, but is now being linked with a move to West Ham, as Fabrizio Romano is calling that. He's called him Jack O'Brien, but it's actually Jake O'Brien. He's one of the names on our shortlist as a centre-back option from Lyon, with Kilman still a strong target, but Wolves want around 45 million. So O'Brien has been added to the list of potentials for this summer. And just to give everyone a little bit of an overview, as I mentioned, there, his name's Jake O'Brien. He's Irish, still only 23 years old, plays centre back, pretty tall at 6'4". His contract expires in 2027, and he has an estimated value of around 15 million euros right now on Transfermarkt. So it's an interesting link, isn't it, Slough? Because, only a couple of seasons ago, he was part of that Crystal Palace under-21 side. This is really his first proper season of football in a top European league. Obviously, Lyon have had their own individual battles this season from a team that looks like they could be going down at one point to somehow salvaging and then, turning it around and pushing on into Europe positions. So first things first, Jake O'Brien, talk to me about the type of player he is and this link to West Ham.
So I've been really impressed with him this season. I think if you were watching Lyon for the whole of the season, he's the only player who can hold his head up high and say for the full length of the season, he gave everything. So that's why some of his stats are going to look as bad as they do, because he was in a Lyon side that was terrible for the first half of it. And, I mentioned this in the live stream. So if you want to go and watch that, click on the channel and do that thing. But Lacazette, apart from him, they're the only two players who I think, you could say had decent seasons. I think he's actually 6'6" instead of 6'4". He's a massive unit. But in terms of how I describe him as the defender, he's basically like Craig Dawson. It's very difficult to assess him as a player because he is young, but also because this is his first proper season in a top flight league. He was playing in Belgium before this, and that's why Lyon brought him over. But it's the sort of move that I think, if he's a good price, I know he's been linked with a couple of moves around 15 million euros, around 50 million pounds. I think that's a good price. It's just about making sure that he does develop. And I think if he were to come in as like a second choice, or just competition for Mavropanos, then I think that's a really smart move.
Talk to me about these defensive statistics that we just mentioned there, that the stats aren't really going to paint the full picture here, but they can give us some indication in parts. But talk to me about this stuff, because obviously the amount of tackles, the amount of interceptions, etc., he's really, really low down in those percentiles. But the two kind of glaringly obvious ones here are challenges lost, which is very, very low. So he's in a very high percentile in terms of that. And also on the right-hand side, in terms of the percentage of aerial duels he's winning, he's around 64%, which is just below the 70th percentile. So why are they? Is this, again, just down to how Lyon were last season in terms of the kind of percentiles he's in for the number of tackles, the number of interceptions, etc.?
Pretty much. That's how I would describe it. His sort of standout attributes are that he's quite quick, but again, at 6'6", he is very dominant physically and aerially. So in one-on-one duels, he's very, very strong in that regard. And his marking is great. So he's going to stay close to his man, and he's not going to give them too much room. And I think, again, from set pieces and things like that, he can hold his head up high and say that I wasn't responsible for that. It wasn't my marker who got away from me. And I think that's what's important to remember when we look at these sort of metrics. Lyon was so bad, and I keep saying it, and I apologize to any Lyon fans, but they probably agree with me. And I know this. I know the Ultras certainly would after they had their big tirade. But he's been great in terms of watching him play. One of the things that I was really surprised at and didn't expect was just his long range passing, and that's kind of why I mentioned Dawson, because I think when we all saw some of the passes that he played, particularly against Lyon, they were brilliant, and they were sort of 40-yard passes across the pitch, and he was playing a number of them this season. So I think when he has a good system around him, and when Leon performed well towards the back end, that's when you saw the best of him, because he looked so composed, so physically dominant, and it's very hard to express just how much those numbers are skewed based off how bad Leon were.
Yeah. And then, I mean, on the kind of flip side, looking at his shooting statistics as an example, you can kind of see here how high he is in terms of the number of shots, the shots on target, the goals. I think he's got 5 goals this season for Lyon in the league. And you can kind of see here, there's not in, in the league, sorry, and the Coupe de France as well. So you can kind of see here that, it's to be taken with a pinch of salt. Obviously, in comparison to other centre backs, he's been prolific in front of goal and it looks amazing. But again, 5 goals for a centre back is a very good return, which is why he's in those high percentiles this season. And in terms of the defensive statistics, as I bring them up again, we want to focus on the challenges lost and the aerial percentage won. Like that, those are the ones to really fixate on, because again, you mentioned the Lyon season. It has been a roller coaster, and there hasn't really been a fixed squad or fixed starting 11 around him where he's been able to develop. And he's still only 23. So as you mentioned, if he was to come into a West Ham team where he's not really got that pressure on him of, the Lyon Ultras, we don't really have West Ham Ultras right now. So yeah, it's a little bit of a different feel. But in terms of, what you mentioned there with the possession stats as well, you can kind of see here, it is very similar to Craig Dawson in that he's not going to be someone that's massively progressing play and carrying the ball, but those big switches, which again isn't really on here. It does have switches on the right, which is around the 56th percentile, but the accuracy of the switches, if it was to get into that, is very high. So yeah, I think in terms of what it would be as a deal slough, obviously 15 million pounds euros. We don't know what the exact figure would be just yet, but for that type of deal, is he someone that's going to come in and start straight away? Is he going to be back up to the likes of Mavropanos for that right centre back position under Lopetegui? How do you see this deal kind of transpiring?
I think the best decision, as I mentioned, just because it's his first full season in the top league, I would bring him in as backup to start with and see how he integrates in, and if he looks like he's ready to make the step up to the Premier League. And I think that he has all the attributes to do so. That's what I kind of gathered from watching him. He has that ability on the ball. Like he's pretty composed on the ball. His touch isn't bad, and he's not the most progressive. But again, first proper season, that could well develop. It may well be that he gets more confident with a team that isn't hemorrhaging goals around him, which after last season is a very big ask for West Ham. But I think that when you consider his role in the side, he has to be the backup at first. But I do personally think he could well challenge Mavropanos going forward as that number one right-sided centre-back. It's difficult to say that he's going to be able to do that due to how much football he's played. But I think off the back of this season, there is a player there, and there's a couple of things he needs to work on, like his agility. He's not the quickest to turn, and I think he sometimes relies on the fact that he is as big as he is to intercept a pass or win a challenge. But it's worked out pretty well for him so far. It's just the odd time that it's, in the Premier League, that's the sort of thing you can get punished for. But I would feel confident about him coming in as a backup and pushing for that starting spot.
Yeah, and I think as well with Lopetegui, it will give the flexibility to play in a back three as well. As you mentioned, if you want someone in the middle of that back three, it's perfect for perfect centre back option. If you've got Mavropanos one side, if he signs a left-footed centre back for the other side, who's a bit more of a ball player. So again, the word balance, we've used it a lot on this channel, is going to be key going into this season. We need to have a balanced squad. We need to have a balanced starting 11. So in terms of the deal being around 15 million euros / pounds, what would you give the transfer out of 10 if it was to come off?
I'd probably give it a 7, just because, as I mentioned, there are question marks over his overall ability because he's played so little football at a top level. But I think, as I mentioned, the raw attributes are there, and someone with that sort of physicality, you know, a number of his goals haven't just been headers, they've been him finishing like Craig Dawson used to do, where he'd run in and throw himself at it and get his foot on the end of something. So I think there's a very good defender there. It's just about bringing it out. And as you mentioned, you know, potentially if he had someone, Mavropanos one side and say Calafiori or Jacob Greaves on the other, then that's a really strong base for a side. And he can be that anchor point in the middle while those two progress the play a bit more. But those are all ifs and buts. I think it's a good deal for the sort of price rumoured, but it's just one that has to have that caveat of, I hope the scouts have done their work, and if they feel confident bringing him into the squad, I think he'll hit the ground running.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a deal dependent on the likes of Kilman, Greaves. I think they're slightly ahead of him in terms of priorities. And I think we are going to see, now it is July, that these deals are going to be pushed. And if, you know, if we really want to push this deal, it probably will happen in the next, you know, 1, 2, 3 weeks of the transfer window, because I think centre back is definitely an area you want to get kind of wrapped up quicker than other positions on the market. So yeah, let us know what you think of the potential deal for O'Brien. Do you agree with Sloth's comments as well? Do you take the statistics with a little bit of a pinch of salt based on our analysis? Let us know. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. So subscribe to the channel if you are new. And Sloth, until the next one.
Come on, you Irons.